Hey, all you rabid readers, loyal listeners, and all-around fucking nerds. I'm your humble host, Troy, and we have another episode of Thomas Code Atrocity. Today's episode is the Geoff Johns Green Lantern Rebirth miniseries. Now, this sort of launches Geoff Johns' incredible Green Lantern run, and we can maybe get into that later, but this is specifically about Rebirth and where Hal Jordan was at this point. The book came out in 2004, and at the time, just before then, Hal Jordan was a super beloved character and kind of put into a situation where Green Lantern books weren't selling. Everyone hated what had happened with Hal Jordan. So in order to really properly frame how amazing and epic this Rebirth story is, I have to tell you how we got to this point. And that means I have to go all the way back to 1992 and go to the death of Superman. And I know you're thinking, I'm listening to this so I can hear some stuff about Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. I don't give a fuck about the death of Superman. What does this thing, 12 years prior have to do with Hal Jordan? Well, don't worry, I'm going to tell you. See, for some reason in the 90s, DC decided to kill off all of their main characters. So you killed Superman, Clark Kent, in the death of Superman. About the same time as Nightfall, when Bane breaks Bruce Wayne's back, causing Azrael to take over as Batman. We all know what ends up happening with that. But for Hal Jordan, it was a little bit different. People loved Superman, people loved Batman, but people fucking loved Hal Jordan. And what they did was, in the follow-up to Death of Superman, we had Reign of Superman. Hal Jordan's out in space. Mongul, which is a, intergalactic war guy. I don't know. I don't think that he's the best villain, if I'm being honest. Not the most depth filled. Anyways, he destroys Host City, which is Hal Jordan's home. All of his friends, all of his family, the people he grew up with, they all die. Like, literally, there's just a crater where the entire city is. Hal Jordan loses his mind. He tries to recreate the entire city, like, as a construct, like, even the people, and he's trying to have conversations with them. This was Emerald Twilight, is like the follow-up of what happens with Hal Jordan after Coastal City. The Guardians are pissed off. They're like, hey man, you can't use your ring for personal gain. So he does what any normal person would do and flies to Oa and decides to kill the Guardians. Like, it's not like he decides it, actually. I'm just joking. But it's instinctually, he's just losing his mind. Anyways, the Guardians decide to bring out Sinestro, who is currently in prison inside the main battery, and that's very important. They decide to use their main battery that powers everyone else's rings as a prison for their worst villains. I see no flaw in this at all. It's like putting, prisoners in prison, but specifically in the room with all of the guns that are given to the guards. Not the smartest idea. Anyways, he straight up kills Sinestro. Hal Jordan breaks his neck. He kills the rest of the Guardians except for Inat, who's the only Guardian who's ever taken a name, as far as I know. He destroys the main battery, and he also kills a bunch of Green Lanterns. He goes full villain. He wears this Dragon Ball Z style get up now, and he has Ray on the side of his hair, and he calls himself Parallax. He refers to himself as Parallax. At the time, also, you have Kyle Rainier, who's this guy who's like a graphic artist, in his dying breath, sort of. I mean, he doesn't die. The Guardians don't die, but whatever. In his dying breath, refuses Hal Jordan's ring and gives it to Kyle Rainier, who doesn't have to adhere to the same rules. It was literally like he just was right place, right time. He gets the ring, and he has the power of the entire battery for himself. This starts the new Green Lantern run with Kyle Rainier. Hal Jordan shows up every once in a while as a villain, as Parallax. People fucking hated it. Like, there's people who like Hal Rainier now, I think, but at the time, people fucking hated that this happened. Like, people didn't like Azrael as Batman, and people didn't like the Reign of Superman situation, but people hated Green Lantern. So fast forward, Hal Jordan's doing his Bat Guy thing. There's like, New Dawn, Emerald Dawn, whatever it's called. Anyways, you have 0 Hour, where Hal Jordan basically gives himself the powers to change time, and he through this, it's not really the best event, but basically he gives himself the power to transcend time and space, and he becomes even more powerful than he already was. At the end, he sort of goes missing or whatever, but you could tell in the event that he's starting to be less of a villain and more of a, I'm just trying to do things so that I can right the wrongs that the Guardians had allowed to happen. Fast forward again, we have Final Night, which is again an okay crossover event. The sun is destroyed by a star-eating alien. Villains and heroes have to team up to try to save the world. It ends with Hal Jordan, Parallax, basically exploding himself, so that way it reignites the sun, or he creates a new sun. There's no negative effects of creating a new sun to Earth or the atmosphere, but whatever, comic books, right? So he technically dies, but you later find out that his body is preserved by the powers of Parallax. I don't know. Anyways, he dies. In, I think, the same event, Final Night, or maybe it was another one, Spectre is removed from Jim Horton, who has been the host that has hosted the Spectre for a long time. And the Spectre is this intergalactic, top tier, literally the spirit of vengeance, but he needs a host body. So he has a couple different choices, and he chooses Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan being a space cop who'd fit the bill. There's some alternative motives that we find out in Rebirth, but yeah. So then for a couple of years, Hal Jordan, who people loved as the Green Lantern, is the spirit of vengeance Spectre. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think that anyone really liked that either. It seemed like DC was just throwing ideas at the wall to try to redeem Hal Jordan, but not being able to make him the Green Lantern, or at least no one coming up with a good idea until Geoff Johns. So, we had 12 years of shit going on, and then Geoff Johns, and he very easily could have just steamrolled over everything and just made it, oh, he's back, he has the ring, resurrection, whatever, magic, comic book bullshit, right? But the way he instructs this is so good, especially given all of that previous knowledge that I had just laid on you. People say that Rebirth is a place that you would start if you're brand new, but I really don't see how that's possible. You do kind of have to know what's been going on with Hal Jordan, how he turned evil, how he died, and literally that's where Rebirth starts, with him as the Spectre and sort of slowly losing his grip on the spirit of vengeance. Hal Rayner at the other time, so there's 3,600 sectors that the Guardians had mapped out, and each Green Lantern had its own sector. Hal Rayner, though, he has to do all of them. He's the only Green Lantern left. There's no core anymore. So he ends up needing to adhere to every planet's needs, and he's stretched so incredibly thin at this point. He's over in sector 3599, and he's helping this planet that doesn't even, is barely intelligent or whatever, but they give him a grave warning, and the grave warning is Parallax is coming. So that sets the house, the foundation of what Rebirth is built on. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get into the actual book now. So also I want to point out that Rebirth is drawn by Ethan Van Sciver, who apparently in real life is a complete asshole or something. I don't really know. I've never met the guy. I don't really like going on Twitter other than posting my videos, but I don't care if he's a terrible person, because his art is fucking sick. It's so good in this. There's a lot of moments where you have Hal Jordan, Parallax, and the Spectre fighting for control, and there's a lot of like internal, I don't know, internal struggles, and it looks very The Thing, where it's, you know, bodies morphing and stuff. There's one panel where Parallax like rips Hal Jordan's face apart, and he's the face underneath. It's super nightmarish. It's so phenomenal. So I do want to point out that Ethan Van Sciver is an incredible artist, and I think that this book really benefits from having someone that distance, that adult, you know, feel, because this book isn't really for children. It's dealing with a lot of adult themes. So hats off to that. But let's get into the story, the real meat of it, right? So, like I told you, Hal Rainier gets this warning, and he decides to come back to Earth. You see him with a ship exploding out of the sun with a coffin. Later on, you'll see that it's, you know, Hal Jordan's body, because it was preserved in the sun. But for like half of the story, Hal Rainier crash lands on Earth and is just sort of like, I don't know, in a haze. These two guys in New Mexico find him and just sort of chill around him to make sure he doesn't die, even though they don't know what's going on. The only real thing that he contributes until later on in the story is saying that there is the impurity of the rings. The impurity he's referring to is for basically since the beginning of Green Lantern, for I don't know 60 years or whatever. Green Lanterns could not penetrate the color yellow. It just was a really dumb rule that people have made fun of for a long time. There's even a Frank Miller Batman book where Batman paints himself yellow and the entire room yellow so that he can trap Green Lantern and whoop his ass. It's really funny. Anyways, Hal Rainier, when he took over as the Green Lantern, writers decided that's a really dumb rule and they're going to stop using that. But they bring up why Hal Rainier doesn't have the ring impurity compared to the other lanterns. Anyways, so Hal Rainier is just sitting there, you know, sunbathing in and with broken ribs and all this stuff as he crash lands. Hal Jordan, on the other hand, is having a lot of trouble. Hal Jordan is trying to live a life. He's trying to be a hero, but the spirit of vengeance doesn't give a shit about being a hero. It's kind of like his whole thing is he won't stop a murder from happening, but he will inflict pain and punishment on a murderer, which is not really Hal Jordan's thing. He saves people, doesn't avenge them, right? So there's a lot of struggle already going on there, and there's some struggle with him trying to figure out if he's Hal Jordan or if he's Parallax. Has he really redeemed himself from the deeds that he did? But he also is just Hal Jordan walking around. So you have like John Stewart, who has his ring. I don't know how he got a ring at this point, but he has his ring. He's the Green Lantern. And you have Yarner, which if you don't know him, he's just like a total asshole, but he's a good guy. So he was the second Green Lantern. If Hal Jordan didn't exist, Yarner would have gotten the ring. But, you know, things are the way they are. At this point, because of, well, actually in the events of Zero Hour that I was telling you about, Yarner gets these like weird alien morphing powers. It's similar to like turning into the Hulk, I guess, but with like weird Indian tribe stuff. Anyways, it's worth noting that they're going to a baseball game and they're like, "Hey Hal, how about you come? Like it's been forever since we hung out with you as a friend, right?" Hal Jordan shows up. Immediately, everyone around him is like trying to confess their sins. Like, "Hey man, I cheated on my wife. Hey, I don't file my taxes." Makes it very uncomfortable. He ends up dipping out because the spirit of vengeance is like, "Hey, I gotta deal with some stuff, man." So it shows that Hal Jordan doesn't get to have a life. Meanwhile, you have Green Arrow, which, if you know anything about the history of Green Lantern, Hal Jordan and Green Arrow are like best friends. There even was a Green Arrow Green Lantern run for a long time. And you have Oliver and Hal have a history. When Hal died, Oliver had his ring and his lantern. And we find him in his basement, you know, Green Arrow in his basement training, and a Green Lantern villain, Black Hand, breaks in. Black Hand is a real like C-list villain up to this point, and well, even beyond this point. Geoff Johns has plans for him later on, which shows the forethought of what Geoff Johns was doing with this book. Anyways, his whole thing, Black Hands, is like to steal energy. So he breaks in because he's like, oh, I sensed the energy of Hal Jordan's Green Lantern ring, and I'm gonna steal it. Arrow very easily bests him, but then Spirit of Vengeance shows up, and he literally turns Black Hand's hand into coal as like a morbid joke. Even in like Black Hand is saying there, William Hand, that's his name, is screaming in pain because he basically had his hand just broken off from him. And even Oliver's like, hey man, you went really far. Like, what the fuck? And Spirit of Vengeance is like, I don't answer to you. Like, fuck off, mortal. And Hal breaks through for a second. He's like, dude, I can't control him anymore. So he dips out. Meanwhile, you have John Stewart and Yarner go back after the game. That go to Yarner's bar, which is like Hollywood themed or something like that. Like, but with superheroes. Like, it's Planet Hollywood, but with superheroes instead. And they're just drinking and having some fun and stuff. And you have Yarner like loses control of his powers, and he's like hulking out, but too much. And he just tells John like, run. And he explodes. John's able to protect himself as he has the ring, obviously. But he explodes, takes off a couple blocks. At the same time, it cuts to these people who are flying a plane over Host City, which to this point has been decimated from the Reign of Superman storyline. And what the pilots see is Host City back. It's there. We find out after Flash runs around, reports back to the Justice League, that Host City isn't back really. It's all the streets are there, all of the stoplights and street lights and all that, and the plumbing all exists. So it's like the foundation's there. But other than one building, it's kind of empty. That one building, however, is Hal Jordan's old apartment when he lived in Host City. So you have Hal Jordan losing control of the Spectre, and you have several things. Oh, I think it's worth mentioning that when Yarner's bar explodes, he has a bunch of statues of all the superheroes around him. The entire bar is completely destroyed and turned to ash, aside from the statue of Hal Jordan. So the Justice League, specifically Batman, is like, oh shit, Parallax is back. John Stewart, of course, doesn't appreciate Batman's claims, and there's a little bit of a back and forth where John Stewart sort of tells Batman, like, you never liked Hal. Like, fuck you. You've always been looking for a reason. And Batman's on some, he literally murdered the entire Green Lantern Corps. Fuck off. Right? And Batman also, when I was talking about the art, he looks so much like a demon in this one. Like, it's always in the silhouette, always with the cape. Oh, it just looks so cool. Anyways, Hal Rainier starts rambling a little bit about the yellow impurity and at this point in time, you have Yarner in the Justice League like hospital Ben, and he looks so messed up. Like, parts of his body are enlarged, but other parts aren't. So you have like his rib cage sticking out, or like veins in his arms that are too big for his arms to contain. It's really gross, right? There's another comment on the art. You have John Stewart goes with majority of the Justice League down to Host City, where Hal Jordan is, after he has just also built Ferris Airlines, Fort Harold Ferris. They used to date. At this point, I don't think they're dating. She's married to some other guy, but there's still, there's still something there. There's still something there. The Justice League confronts Hal Jordan. Is like, hey man, we gotta talk. Even like Superman, everyone. Like, Batman's the one that's like really hard on trying to nail him down. But the whole Justice League, like, hey man, we gotta at least talk. You have John Stewart with the Justice League, right? And you have Hal Rainier talking about this impurity. Now, Hal Jordan, the Spectre's on some like, hey, we gotta dip out. Like, I don't even give a fuck about these people. This is human problems. We had stuff we gotta do. and they leave and go to the building that is Hal Jordan's apartment that's in Coastal City. Now, Hal Jordan says that he had nothing to do with the bar exploding, nothing to do with Coastal City being there, but also he's not really in control of what's going on anymore, and he's brought to his old apartment against his will. This is when the Spectre sort of explains why he chose Hal Jordan. See, Hal Jordan is not just... He didn't just turn into a villain and choose the name Parallax. See, Parallax was an entity that existed since the beginning of time. And this is what Hal Rainier finds out when he's on that distant planet. All those aliens led him into a cave to show him like these cave paintings of this old demon that used to play in the universe. Originally, the Guardians had fought him and imprisoned him in the battery that became the willpower of Oa that powers all the Green Lanterns. Remember how I told you they love to throw their worst enemies into the battery that powers the rings? What ended up happening is this Parallax, this parasitic demon god-like creature who lived in the battery, was the reason for the yellow impurity. So when Hal Jordan turned evil and chose the name Parallax, it was the parasite infecting him because he was the best of the Green Lanterns, and it caused him to destroy the battery, which then released the yellow impurity, and that's why Hal Rainier, who is the ring after the fact, doesn't have the impurity. However, the impurity now is affecting everyone in a very bad way. So you have John Stewart basically goes a little crazy and attacks the Justice League. And John Stewart, he's never really given them much of props. In this one, he's really cool because everyone likes to focus on the fact that he was a Marine and that he constructs guns and rocket launchers and stuff like that. But he also was an architect, and that's what me and Van Sciver and Geoff Johns decide to go with. Is he's not just instructing big guns. He's instructing really sound, solid foundations, these architectural structures that are really hard for like even Superman to break. And he starts fucking up the whole Justice League. On the other hand, you have Green Arrow, who has taken Hal Jordan's ring up to the watchtower that's, in space. I think it's on the moon in this comic. And it splits into two, goes onto Gardner's finger, and he becomes a Green Lantern again. It instantly heals him, but he's slightly turned evil. He has that impurity going on. Like, you literally see like yellow in their eyes. And he starts attacking the rest of the Justice League that's on the watchtower. Kyle Rayner's finally deciding to wake up from his nap at this point. Just as Kilowat, for no reason, Kilowat decides to show up and attack him, and he has the yellow impurity too. But also just in time, Inat shows up to protect Hal Rainier. As Hal Rainier doesn't have the impurity, he's not turning evil. But that's when you find out that, he has been protecting the body of Hal Jordan this entire time. Hal Jordan is in this crazy, weird mindfuck situation where the Spirit of Vengeance decided to inform him that he chose Hal Jordan on purpose because of the parasites that's attached to him, and he was hoping that his vengeance could burn out the parasite. Parallax decides to play his hand at this point and is like, bro, I've been using you, the Spirit of Vengeance, as a host, the same way you have been using Hal Jordan as a host, and now I'm more powerful than you. I'm more powerful than Hal. Fuck all y'all. Parallax is back, homie. And he basically comes out of this three-way mind fight, and Parallax has controlled the body of Hal Jordan, and it's even like he's even more fucked up than normal. He has like these razor teeth and stuff, and he looks more like the parasite that we were seeing in the story. Hal Rainier, with the help of Inat, flees the fight with Hillawa and goes up to the watchtower with Hal Jordan's body in hopes to get help with the situation. Is now he knows everything about Parallax and he's going to inform the Justice League about it. Unfortunately, the Justice League watchtower is kind of destroyed. Whoever was up there is knocked out because of Yarner has dipped out at this point and gone to join John Stewart fighting up the Justice League, right? So he goes up there. The only person up there that's conscious is Oliver, Rhaenyra. And so he sort of at least explains it to Rhaenyra just in time for them to not be able to come up with a plan because Sinestro comes through a portal and attacks him. And Sinestro is so like creepy and weird in this one. I love it. But a lot of people, if you Google Sinestro, you'll get like the yellow suit and stuff, and we'll get into that in a bit. But this was old school Sinestro. This is the blue and black suit. See, his yellow ring at this point in the story was from Sinestro after he, runs away from the Green Lanterns. He goes to the anti-universe where the anti-monitor's from, and he goes to this planet and he instructs a ring that's the opposite of green, which at the time in the storyline, the opposite of green was yellow because no one had ever, looked up a color chart before. Anyways, so his ring, which is yellow, is still like the impurity anti version, right? It's not like the ring we all know, which is based on fear, which Parallax is the demon of fear. You'll probably see where we're going, and I'll into it in a bit. Anyways, Sinestro attacks. He's like, "Hey, fuck you guys." It turns out when I was in the prison with Parallax, I was the one that sent Parallax in the direction of Hal Jordan, because fuck that guy, right? So you have Hal Rainier and Rhaenyra trying to fight Sinestro and kind of getting their ass whooped. Anyways, back down to Earth. You have John Stewart, Yarner, and Parallax all fighting the Justice League. And the Justice League is losing, but the Justice League has Inat now. Inat kind of uses his powers to cleanse all the, Hillawa, John Stewart, Yarner, but you still have Parallax. Parallax on the inside, though, is this fight between the Spectre and Hal Jordan and Parallax are all still going on. Eventually, Hal Jordan breaks free, rips himself out of the body of Parallax, and basically severs the connection between the three. The Spectre, the Spirit of Vengeance, is like, alright, well, this has nothing to do with me, dips out. Like, that's it. He basically half caused all this. He could have just let them die, but took Hal Jordan's body, but he dips out. I think eventually he gets reattached to the body of Jim Horton, but he doesn't have much to say about this. Parallax, who needs a host body, however, merges with Inat, which is the most powerful being in the area. But before he dies, he sends like a light for the spirit of Hal Jordan to follow. And where does that light lead him back to? His corpse on the watchtower, on the moon. Hal Jordan's spirit merges with his body once more. The ring that Oliver had brought up there goes onto the Fainter. Boom, rebirth. Hal Jordan, he's back, baby. And he has such an awesome attitude. Just immediately starts whooping the shit out of Sinestro. Like, it's actually a really cool fight on the moon, the way it's designed with their colors swirling around. But Sinestro is like, hey man, I made you a murderer. I'm better than you. I'm the best Green Lantern ever, and I'm better than every Green Lantern. And Hal Jordan's on some, I don't really give a shit, and fucking evaporates him. Like, literally, you see his skeleton and stuff, but the ring lets you know that he didn't actually die. He escaped last minute into a portal and went back to his anti-dimension, right? And then this part is really important. No one liked Hal Rainier. I mean, like, the audience members didn't really like Hal Rainier at this point. Numbers for Green Lantern weren't selling. Hal Jordan came back because they wanted things to get back to normal, because people loved Hal Jordan. And you could have killed off Rainier or whatever, right? Rainier himself even says he was never meant to be a Green Lantern. It was right place at right time, and now the Hal's back. Like, whatever. And Hal Jordan turns around and thanks Hal Rainier. He says, when no one was here, you protected the entire galaxy. You're the best Green Lantern of all of us. And for the first time, Hal Jordan, not as a villain, because they met multiple times when he was Parallax, but as Hal Jordan, shakes Hal's hands and thanks him and decides to say, well, let's go, Green Lantern. You know, like no sass, no, you know, just like, come on, you're a Green Lantern too. Let's do this. So it's a really cool moment. Anyways, Hal Jordan comes back down to Earth. Hal Rainier, Yarner, John Stewart, Hillawatt, they're all good now. They're all solid. And they're like, oh shit, and that is possessed by this demon Parallax. Let's go to work. And Batman's like, are you fucking hitting me? Like, what? What? Like, none of this is phasing any of you? Like, fuck this guy, right? And I'm a huge Batman fan. That's my number one. I'll always go Batman first. But what happens next is amazing. Hal Jordan punches out Batman. And Batman's on some, like, you expect me to believe this? And Hal Jordan's like, I don't really give a shit what you believe. Even Alan Scott, who's not really a Green Lantern as far as the horror is concerned, his ring, which gives him the power to do things with green magic that is powered by a literal lantern, but he went by the name Green Lantern, isn't technically a Green Lantern though. DC really has to fix that. Anyways, even he like kind of joins in and at least tells the Justice League, hey man, they got this. Huge battle happens, you know, all of them using their individual versions of their power. You know, Hal Jordan is just the best of the best. Hillawatt is a beast, you know, his constructs literally make noise. You have the architect John Stewart, you have the graphic designer Hal Rainier, a wild style. Yarner, like literally sparks fly out of his constructs as they're hard to even contain, and they all go toe to toe with Parallax, which eventually they burn the parasite out of him. The parasite goes and does whatever it's gonna do, which I mean I'll get to that in a second in the future. But the day is saved. Hal Jordan's back. The horror is back. It shows that the battery on Oa gets relit, you know, and the day is saved. And it's a really great, solid story. So after this, Geoff Johns starts his Green Lantern run, which it starts off pretty solid. You know, there's some groundwork that needs to happen. He's trying to rescue some of the lingering Green Lanterns. What happened to them after their powers went away? He has to fight the Manhunters, which were the android systems that the Guardians originally used to protect the universe. And it's really just like upheap. But what Geoff Johns did in Rebirth and his run after this is he created the light spectrum. What majority of people know for Green Lantern is that there isn't just green, there's also, you know, they're all emotion based too. There's the yellow lanterns that are based on fear. Where do you think that came from? You have the pink lanterns are love, the blue lanterns are hope, so on so forth, right? And this leads into this amazing run, and that's why this is going to be part one of Geoff Johns' Green Lantern, and the part two that I will put out next is the Sinestro Corpse War. It's the first time you really get to see the fallout of these grand rules being changed in the Green Lantern universe, and it's really enjoyable. So if you have been listening this whole time, and if you really like this episode, I hope you look forward to the next one, which will be the Sinestro Corpse War. I plan on then getting into the Rage of the Red Lanterns, where you find out what happened originally with the Manhunters that destroyed Sector 666, and that leads to the Red Lanterns. There's Agent Orange, and this all leads up to Blackness Night, which is probably one of the greatest DC events ever, and Geoff Johns has been working on it since Rebirth. So this was very important to get into Geoff Johns' run, and I think that it's one of the best comic book stories ever. It will make you a Green Lantern fan for sure. So stick around. I hope you liked it. Let me know if you have any other suggestions you would like me to get to, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks everyone for listening. I'll catch you guys next time.